Hello everybody, Mannix here. It's time for yet another cold steel folding knife review. This is on an instant favorite of mine, the cold steel Espada in G10. Classic design, it's been around for quite a long time, but it's gone through a handful of minor changes over the years. This is mid-early 2022 as I am filming this right now. I just bought this new a few weeks ago. Large size G10 Espada. They also make this in an XL size if this was not big enough for you. I would like to review that one day. But they also make this in the fancy version, I like to call it. It's kind of difficult to label them or go by the name, but it's basically just the non-G10 version. And they stick the S35VN blade steel on the fancier versions. I have that one of the large. This happens to be the budget version or the more tactical version, I could say. Whatever you want to call it. It's in the model name, but it's the G10 large Espada with the AUS 10A blade steel. So it's going to be considerably cheaper, nearly half the price. And it outperforms the fancier version in some ways. Let's start the review. Blade length of 5.5 inches. 5.5 inches, you heard that correctly. Just under half a foot. Handle length is 6.75 inches, making the overall length 12.25 inches, so it's just over a foot in length overall. AUS 10A blade steel, as I said, we have a stonewash finish on there, which is absolutely gorgeous. Weighs 9.2 ounces according to Cold Steel's official website. So it's on the heavier side. I've had heavier knives that were smaller than this, believe it or not, so it doesn't really bother me. Its weight's, adequate for its size. It's not terribly heavy for its size. Triad locking mechanism. I like this steel liner we have back here. It is not fully steel lined. This is just pure G10 handles right here. But we have two slim steel liners right here. I think that just helps with the integrity of the horizontal torsion you would put on this knife perhaps, but without weighing the entire knife down. I think they just decided to put them in this little section toward the spine. Or along the spine, I should say. If you look closely, that's about how thick the liners are. Just it also probably allows the lock bar to be a little bit more smooth, perhaps. Don't know why they did that exactly, but it's really cool. I'm not complaining. I think it strengthens up the knife overall. They put it where all the business end and all the strength and all the tension is going to be without flooding the entire handle scales with them either. Interesting. Strong and lightens up the knife a little bit. Again, could have been a lot heavier. Tip up carry only. Swappable to the left side, or not swappable, it comes with a second pocket clip that you can use for the other side because it's lopsided. Completely ambidextrous. We have a thumb plate up here. Again, triad locking mechanism is ambidextrous. So lefties rejoice if you want a big, huge folding knife. It's not just big, it's massive. Absolutely massive. Again, almost a 6-inch blade on here. Absolutely insane. It's about the length of the XL style Voyagers, if you're familiar with those. Absolutely love the way this knife looks. $229.99 is currently what it retails at, but you can get these for about $130, $140 maybe. $140 on the higher end for sure. You can get the XL for maybe $155, $160. I want to say that's a massive. This is already huge. This is XL. It's way bigger than most large folding knives. It's bigger than 95% of the large folding knives, if not more than those on the market. But the XL's another step above that. That one's just like comically huge, but some people will argue this is comically huge already. It's huge. Over a foot long overall length. I mean, look at the reach you have here. If I scooch all the way down here in its last position, I would call that, yeah, a lot of reach. It's going to be a very strong outdoorsman's knife. It's more like a defensive blade to me, the way it's shaped overall and how slim it is, so it's not too cumbersome to carry. I mean, it's big, it's wide, it takes up a lot of space in your pocket this way. So if it's in your pocket in your right hand, it's going to be like this. It's going to carry just like that. So it doesn't really matter if it takes up that much width anyway. It doesn't bother me, but it's not very thick. It's pretty slim for its size, actually. If you compare this to, say, the Cold Steel Voyager XL, that's definitely going to be wider. The Raja, too, much wider than this guy. So it's slim for an XL size folder. I love this almost Persian-style blade. It's a clip point blade, I would call it. We have a decent amount of belly right here. They recently changed the blade shape. Not recently, probably more like 6, 7, maybe even longer than that, years ago. They changed the blade shape on the Espadas since then. It's just slightly different. I think the clip starts here instead of down here. Or maybe the clip used to start up here. I can't remember, but they changed the blade shape slightly. But it's absolutely beautiful. You have a lot of belly to work with right here. Pierces very nicely, too, because of that clip. Beautiful. Beautiful. There's nothing I could really change about this blade, I think. Absolutely gorgeous. Super strong. Trad-lock is one of the strongest locking mechanisms in the world, and it's very smart that, once again, they put it on one of their giant knives. So it's not just huge, it's also very, very strong. It's not going to disengage on you very easily, if at all. What would break this knife or cause it to disengage would probably crack the handles in half before the the locking mechanism disengages. It's very, very strong. Very, very strong. Or the blade would snap in half before the locking mechanism would break. So it's pretty strong. Very comfortable. We have, I think, 3 main grips. So this is going to be the choke up or precision grip, as I like to call it, where you rest your middle finger in the main choil right there. Index finger in between the guard and the ricasso of the blade. If you're doing shaving, you're doing whittling, you're trying to scrape something off, that's what I would do that for. Not that this knife's going to be great at most of those tasks, but you can in a pinch. This is going to be the standard grip or the conventional grip. Pinky's at the very end of the choil right there, or the last choil there, and then the index finger's on the main choil there. You have a little lip right here for your other 2 fingers. Thumb rests just like that. There's no thumb ramp or anything. This jimping is completely useless, by the way. It looks really cool. I like how there's a cutout within the G10 handle scales that accommodate the liner right there. It looks beautiful. It is a very nice fit and finish. It is rounded on the edges. It's very comfortable, very smooth. The whole knife's very rounded, as you can see on the edges. It's not pointy or uncomfortable in any position, so it's a really good job there. Nice, smooth fit and finish once again. But there's no thumb ramp. The thumb just kind of freely does whatever it wants, but you're not going to accidentally get it cut or anything, so who really cares? And you can scooch down here for extra grip. That's what this choil right here is for. Very, very comfortable. Very comfortable all the way down here. There's so much to grip onto. It's very tight, and because the handle's on the slimmer side, I feel like my fingers can really wrap around and lock in right there. Sorry, I'm having some trouble keeping this in frames. It's such a big knife. Absolutely massive. So again, those are what I would call the 3 main grips. This is going to be your defensive grip, or if you're hacking or slashing against something, that's what I would use. But again, this is going to be the standard grip for most tasks, and then precision tasks are going to be up here. Very versatile. Beautiful. Just menacing blade. It's just such a cool knife. It's a little expensive, you know, $120 or so is about what you're going to spend, but it's not terribly expensive. It could be worse. There are knives out there that are much smaller than this that are that price, so just keep that in mind. It is AUS 10A, if you're not familiar. It's like AUS 8A, but it has considerably more carbon content in it, which means essentially it's going to be sharper. Edge is going to last longer. It takes a razor sharp edge. I would call it better than AUS 8A, but it's going to be a little bit less corrosion resistant, just because you got more carbon in there and you have no chromium or any other elements trying to help counteract that. But as far as sharpness goes, as far as effectiveness in cutting, it's going to be better than AUS 8A, which already is a pretty good steel, so it's just not terribly expensive either. It's a good steel overall. I'm glad they made the change from AUS 8 to AUS 10, and I like how they put a cheaper blade steel on this one in comparison to their others. The Holdout 1, the Talwar, you know, a lot of their other giant knives that Colts is currently making, they stick the S35VN on, which is a great steel. That's a super steel. It's like a god tier blade steel for the money. But speaking of money, it does make the costs go up. Those knives are considerably more expensive than this one. A Talwar, which is about the same length of this knife right here, that's going to be about $170. If you find around on that online, again, this was like $130. It's pretty much that blade steel. All the materials and the length are about the same exact thing, but the blade steel in this guy is the AUS 10A. The others, they use the S35VN, which is a better blade steel, but for this size of knife, what are you using your knives for? Are you really using this for EDC tasks? You know, cutting and cutting and cutting to the point where like, oh man, it dulled on me, I need to resharpen it. S35VN wouldn't do that to me. Yeah, there's a handful of people out there who use their knives, these size knives anyway, like that, where they will actually notice the difference. But for a big knife like this, for me, it's more like a last-ditch defensive tool. You know, you want that reach, you want that strength there, and you don't really need an edge that's going to last forever. It's just not necessary because you're not cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting with it. You're keeping it on you and carrying it as a backup defensive option, or maybe your only defensive option if you don't have a gun on you. And you just keep it there. You don't really use it all that often, except for occasionally when you have to cut a package open or something. But then again, if you're going to carry a big old knife like this, I would recommend carrying an EDC knife anyway. So my point is, I don't think putting the super expensive blade steels on the knives this size is that necessary. I don't think it really matters that much. It just makes the price go up without really giving you much extra performance, because if you're not using the blade steel, what does it matter if you have a good blade steel on it or not? But it does help the coolness factor. I'll give it that. If you have a knife with a really high quality blade steel and it's huge, it just makes the knife more special, which is why they sell the Espadas with the S35VN blade steel. They have the fancier handle. They have a G10 handle scale that's polished. It's not grippy like this one. And then they have like an aluminum bolster on there. They're fancier looking. Then they throw a satin finish instead of stonewash finish. And the final difference, the main one anyway, is the S35N blade steel instead of these AUS 10A blade steel. So those are nearly double the price of these though. So you get a better blade steel, but pretty much everything else is going to be more slick and sleek and better for EDC. I think they're heavier too, so I guess you could argue they're worse for EDC. They're just fancier, but I'm glad with the G10 version of the Espada, they stuck with a more affordable blade steel. Good job, Cold Steel. I'd like to see you do that more often with your bigger blades, because then you can keep costs down while keeping the sizes enormous. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe those are selling really well, even with the really high-quality blade steels. I don't know. Very fast, deploys out with a thwack. Just, light wrist flick for a 5.5-inch blade. That is completely adequate. That's very impressive, actually, for this size knife. There's no way in hell you're going to be opening it without a wrist flick. It does rebound back on you like that, so just keep that in mind, because it is a lockback style folder. You can open it conventionally, like so. It's usually what I do in public. I'm not usually going to do that. It just looks like you're about to attack someone, so yeah, keep that in mind. You don't want to scare the sheeple. Open it conventionally. If you do have to make a cut, this is the only knife you have on you. You can wave this off of your pocket with that little thumb plate right there, meaning if you extract it out of the pocket, it can snag on your pocket and you can thwack it out like that. You'll wind up in about this position with your pinky not really gripping on too much if you deploy it that way. I've practiced and practiced with these cold steels, waving them off and off and off and off over and over again, trying to get a good grip on them, and I always wind up in this position, which is good enough. I'm a lot more comfortable in this position with my pinky also gripping onto the handle. But just the way the knife's designed and the way the pocket clip is positioned, it's not like down here, it's up here. So there's not a whole lot more to grip onto. You're going to wind up in this position, best case scenario, if you wave this off your pocket, if you had to deploy it quickly and you were in a defensive situation. Not great, but not bad either. You'd have to get this in hand. It feels secure, but not totally secure like this. You do have more reach, I'll give it that, but again, I'd prefer to be up here. I feel a lot more comfortable, and I feel like it's not going to get knocked out of my hand very easily at all. My whole hand can fit this entire, like half the handle pretty much. There's still so much there, which adds to your reach. So really, really massive, massive knife. Very comfortable. It's smooth. It's pretty slick and slim, so it's carryable for what it is. It is wide, but it's not thick. The G10, I was really surprised when I first got this. It's not as aggressive as the other cold steels. Like, for example, hold out one. You can even see the difference in the pattern. The one on the left, the Espada, is a lot more fine. Feels kind of like a Spyderco Tenacious or something. One on the right's a lot more aggressive. Feels like the typical pattern they put on their knives, like the Recon 1, the AK-47, the American Lawman, etc., etc. A lot grippier on the right, but this is more smooth. I don't know why they did that. I was kind of surprised. I was expecting the really grippy texture, but they didn't put it on there. So, I don't think it's a bad or a good thing. This is different. Whatever. It's smooth to the touch. Smoother, I should say. It's still pretty grippy, but, it's a nice material. Again, rounded, smooth, very beautiful fit and finish. Great attention to detail. Pocket clip works fine. It's not my favorite design or anything, but it's not a bad design either. They stick this on lots and lots of their knives. Most of their knives use this if you're familiar with the Voyagers. Same pocket clip. That's about what's going to be poking out of your pocket. It doesn't look like it's a huge knife or anything. Most people would probably think that's a knife in your pocket, but they wouldn't imagine this is under there because the pocket clip is pretty stubby. I do like the stubby clips, believe it or not. I don't necessarily need a long pocket clip. I don't dislike those, but I like the stubby clips too. It's tight. It's not going to fall out of your pocket anytime soon. This one, I'm just clipping it on and off my jeans or my cargo pants right now, and it's I've had no problem. It must be the combination of the texture on here in the pocket clip, but it's not too tight for my tastes. A lot of people don't like the cold steel pocket clips for being tight. This one's actually perfect tension. It's not too tight, not too loose. No problems on my end anyway with this knife. But some people do complain about a lot of the cold steel pocket clips being too tight. I don't think this is one of them. But you never know. Tension can be slightly different depending on which one you get, so who knows. This one I think is just perfect, though. It's not too tight, not too loose. Good blade steel. I love the stonewash. I love the blade shape. It's a great defensive blade. A lot to hold on to. It's got a good reach. It's very comfortable. We have a nice fit and finish. Ultra strong locking mechanism. No blade play in pretty much any direction that I can detect. No up and down. No side to side, rock solid lockup, all that stuff that's to be expected with typical cold steels. It's completely ambidextrous. It's not too expensive. It's not cheap, but it's not a really expensive knife either. Again, 120, 130 bucks maybe. For this size, it's completely adequate. I got this for, I think, 106. Found a sale online, so really happy about the price I got for this guy. It's absolutely amazing. If you want something fancier looking, go with the more expensive version with the S35VN. But if you want something a little bit more functional overall, minus the blade steel, I would get this if you want to save almost 50% of the cost. Great defensive option. I love the backspacer on here. I like the little steel liners they have that occupy half the spine. Just absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous defensive blade. Really cool. Very good for slashes, good for pierces overall. It's going to be a great defensive blade. Good blade to take out with you in the woods too, maybe. But if you're just doing that, I would take the Voyagers. This knife is in somewhat of an odd spot. If you were to compare this to, say, the Clip Blade XL Voyager, which is about the same length of this guy, the main difference being that one's got Griv X handle scales with aluminum liners. This is pure G10 with some liners in it, but this knife's a lot more expensive. This knife's going to be typically 40, 50 more bucks than that, and the blade still is the same. Locking mechanism's the same. Length is about the same. I mean, the overall shape's quite different in comparison to the Voyager, but this one, you have the thumb plate, so you can wave it off the pocket. The Voyager, you cannot. But I think it's just the blade. The G10. G10 makes knives considerably more expensive. I don't know what it is. I think it's just that much more expensive in comparison to FRN. The blade's going to be a little bit wider on this one too, which probably ups the cost. But if you're purely just looking for function, you're trying to save every penny, I would just get an XL Voyager, to be honest. This one doesn't really offer a whole lot extra. I think it's just cooler. I think it's really cool for the collection. But functionally speaking, as far as cold steel is concerned, the Voyager wins overall as far as function goes. If you want a big old XL size clip blade with the same materials, pretty much. The blade still is exactly the same. And it also has a stonewash finish. It just has thumb studs instead of a thumb plate. So, you can do better as far as function goes. It's just a little bit on the pricey side. You don't really gain anything with this knife in comparison to the XL Voyager. But as far as its shape goes, as far as its slimness, you do win with this. So you could say EDC is maybe a little bit better with this guy. But I think it's a little bit heavier too than the Voyager. But I absolutely love it. Absolutely love the Espada. Super cool looking. Fast deployment, comfortable, carries well. Not too heavy. Not too expensive. I don't have any major complaints with this thing. It belongs in every cold steel collection. So there you have it. It's the largest Espada G10.